bring me some food.
What do you want?
I could have sausage gravy and biscuits. Wendy's.
Okay.
Liberty. Liberty.
With Howard Monroe.
Hey, I'm going to the kitchen. Can I grab you a Coors Light?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Huh. I never knew there was a zip line in my fridge. Hey! Hey, buddy! Yeah! You got 2 Coors Lights up there?
You got it!
Always brewed down to 34 degrees. With a taste as cold as the Rockies, only Coors Light gives you refreshment every time.
Here you go. 2 Coors Lights.
Awesome, man. Wow, these are really cold.
That's the only way I deliver it.
Sure. I mean, you being a mountain climber and all,
Yep.
you probably need a pretty warm coat in there, huh?
Yep.
Hey, Ben!
Yeah!
Ask him if he has any nachos.
You got any nachos in there?
No.
Just icy cold Coors Light?
Yep.
That makes sense. It is the Rockies.
Coors Light, the world's most refreshing beer. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. With great beer comes great responsibility.
A serious injury from an accident can be just the start of your worries. What if you cannot return to work? How do you take care of your family if you're disabled? At Gelner Law Offices, we represent seriously injured people and understand their problem. We know how to get you fair compensation. We will work hard to make sure you get the money you deserve for your losses. Don't go it alone. If you're hurt in an accident, call us at 304-242-2900 or visit us at gelnerlaw.com.
We'd like to help.
Now, during the Jim Robinson Ford Lincoln Toyota Pre-Owned Super Sale, select from over 80 vehicles in stock starting under $5,000. Most are local trades, many with one owner. Hurry to Jim Robinson at the Highlands, home of lifetime powertrain protection. Now, during the Jim Robinson Ford Lincoln Toyota Pre-Owned Super Sale, select from over 80 vehicles in stock starting under $5,000. Most are local trades, many with one owner. Hurry to Jim Robinson at the Highlands, home of lifetime powertrain protection.
Are you traveling? Working a little bit too much? Is your fur baby starting to get a little shaggy? Let Dirty Paws be your one-stop shop for all of your pet care needs. Stop in and see us at 202 18th Street or give us a call at 304-639-7754 to schedule your appointments for dog grooming, doggy daycare, and dog boarding today.
Over the years, you've brought opioids into your home. They helped when you were in pain, and you held on to them just in case. But holding on to opioids puts your family at risk. Learn more at www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
For all of your IT needs, visit OmniPerforms.com. Omni Strategic Technologies, the only IT company that the watchdog trusts.
Hello, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm the Storm Tracker, Darnell Foster. With a look at your local weather forecast for your Tuesday. Look for mostly cloudy skies, widely scattered showers and storms. A daytime high near 59. Overnight low at 47 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. Mostly cloudy and cool for your Wednesday, with highs in the lower 50s. Have yourself a great day, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm Darnell Foster.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors.
Live from the Robinson Auto Group studios in the heart of the Ohio Valley, this is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe.
As the sun comes up, although we can't see it behind the clouds, as the sun comes up, the temperature actually dropping a degree or two around the upper Ohio Valley. 47 degrees now at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. 48 degrees here at my home studios and 48 degrees at the Robinson Auto Group studios. Downtown Wheeling in the heart of the Ohio Valley, we are looking at a cloudy morning. Had some rain earlier. It is not, at least it doesn't seem to be raining right now, but it's definitely very cloudy, very overcast. To a large extent, what you see is what you get. It's going to be cloudy, maybe a little bit of rain, and 51 or so for the predicted high, which is right around where we are. So just not going to change much. Look out the window. See that? Live with it throughout the day today. Where are we going and where have we been on the Watchdog Morning Show today? Does one of the Valley's most popular retail spots have an identity crisis? The Ohio County Development Authority talked about that involving the Highlands last night. We were getting some of your take on it, and you offered some of my opinion. Biff had some thoughts as well. We can continue chatting about that. In fact, you can also continue to text me at 304-214-1600 on the Highlands. Melanie Joy's got a new book, wondering why is it in America, the name of the book, why we love dogs, eat pigs, and wear cows. The love-hate relationship Americans have with animals. She's with us for a bit of an unusual interview coming up a little bit later on in this hour of the show. Convicted former West Virginia Supreme Court Justice Alan Lawfrey wants the U.S. Supremes to consider the potential impact of social media interaction on juror bias. Jurors are always told not to read news stories, not to watch television shows, but what if they get some information on social media? What if they're liking a reporter who is following a story? Is that juror bias for the 21st century that's not necessarily part of our current judicial background? Lawfrey's attorneys want the U.S. Supreme Court to take a look at that. Educator and author Josh Beach argues in a new book out that what we measure in education, the things that we measure, the way we begin to decide whether somebody's working or not working, whether education reform is working or not working, is really irrelevant and doesn't measure the right stuff. He's with us today to talk about that. And we've been talking a lot about Halloween and all that kind of good stuff too. So a lot here. If you have something on your mind, text me 304-214-1600, 304-214-1600. We're talking about the Highlands, and I asked the question, when I say the Highlands, what do you think of? One of the people who spoke to the County Development Authority last night said they think of Cabela's. Biff said, as I would, food. Food is what he thinks of. And off the text line, sports complex is what I think of at the Highlands. And Biff, it should be what you think of too.
That was close behind. If there were a second, it would have been the sports complex. But it was right there. It was between that and the food places. So I went with that. And
the variety of food we have up there, though. I mean, just such a nice mixture of restaurants up there. So I'm still going for, at least for me, and I think you're right. Food. First thing I think of is food. And sports complex, interesting enough, is one of the newest additions up there, and yet it also is already one of the things people think of first.
Oh yeah, I mean if you haven't been up there, I mean it's something to see. I mean there's all kind of basketball courts and indoor soccer and just all kind of stuff in there and different things that they can do. I mean, they have parties and stuff in there, and it's neat. I mean, if you haven't been up to see it, go up and take a look at it. And you were talking about Alan Lawfrey and the desk we were trying to think of.
Former Supreme Court Justice, convicted, yes.
Yes, the Cass Gilbert.
Yeah, remember, he had taken a desk of some kind. Cass Gilbert desk. That's right. That's what it was.
Yep.
Okay.
That was the name of it.
Because he had taken the Cass Gilbert desk, historic piece of West Virginia furniture, if you will, that he had taken from the Supreme Court and taken home. And that got in trouble for that, as well as spending too much money and all those kind of things too. All right, yeah, the Cass Gilbert. I couldn't think of that. Oh, all right. One more thing before I get to Tom Squitieri, only because I'm trying to get a little Halloween stuff in here every day. What I get so excited about is when my grandson Teddy really likes something that I grew up loving as well. And he has become, just recently, a big fan of watching the Charlie Brown specials, Biff. And, you know, I grew up on Charlie Brown and you know, the holiday specials. So we watched this past weekend, Teddy and I watched It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. And he asked to watch it, which I thought was great. And I love that show. I just love all those Peanut shows. But I can't, some interesting little tidbits, though, about that particular show. It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, which I guess came on in the 70s, right? I don't have the date here, but it's been around for a long time. When we think of Lucy and Charlie Brown, what is one of the images that we have between those two frequently, Biff? Lucy and Charlie Brown.
The football.
That's it. That's exactly right. Every year she says, Charlie Brown, come kick the football. And he runs up and he takes a good kick and she pulls the football out from underneath him. I did not realize that it was in the show, It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, that she pulled the football away for the first time. So there you go. Something to know about. And It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. I assume you watched it when you were a kid, right, Biff?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, what did Charlie Brown get when trick-or-treating? In his treat bag. All the kids I got a Snickers bar. I got some M&Ms. I got a candied apple. What did Charlie always get? Do you remember?
Reese's?
He got a rock.
Oh.
He got a rock. I got a rock. I got a rock. Apparently, Charles Schultz, the creator of Peanuts, his office was sent so much candy by fans because they were upset that Charlie didn't get candy, and they wanted candy to give to Charlie Brown. And finally, just a little tidbit. The young girl who voiced the character Sally had to record her lines very quickly before everybody else did because the young girl who was doing she had a loose tooth.
Oh, no.
And the producers were worried if that tooth came out, she would have a lisp and wouldn't be able to do the lines. So they had to rush her through. Anyways, it's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. He's not a pumpkin, but he's a reporter, a journalist, a correspondent, a nice guy. He's Tom Squitieri. He always sits patiently while we talk about other things here. Good morning, Tom.
I sit patiently in full enjoyment. I have to tell you, it really puts me in a wonderful mood. And I even have a segue, which I'll get to in a moment. If I may, because we always have to talk about cultural stuff, Howard. I know that it's become de rigueur for us, and I enjoy. My favorite part of those movies that I watched, as you and Biff did, is when Snoopy kisses Lucy, and he has that great smile on his face. Oh, I was kissed by a dog. And it's sort of like the ultimate payback. She's tormenting Charlie Brown, and he gives her a kiss. I mean, that's Snoopy. I'd rather be the positive one. But today the Charlie Brown, the Lucy of Capitol Hill politics, Senator Joe Manchin, is maybe poised to pull the football away again from the Democrats. How's that for a segue? You have to like it. Come on,
that was one good segue, sir.
Come on, that was.
That's why you get the big bucks.
At least the big laughs, anyway. So he's supposed to be speaking as we speak. He's supposed to be speaking as we speak right now at the Washington Economics Club, and he's going to say his latest iteration of what he's seeking in all these deals. My head is like Charlie Brown, I think. I keep reading, we're going to have a deal, like Charlie Brown, I'm going to kick that football, and we go running down the street or the path of the congressional gallery or whatever you want to call it, and whoop, there we go.
No, that Lucy analogy is great because, and this week is a perfect example. Manchin and Biden meet. The headlines are Manchin sees a deal on Biden agenda possible this week, and think we might. I forget how he phrased it. Senator, do you think? Well, I think we have a deal. I think we're close to a deal in principle. It's all going to work. And then, there goes the football.
Yeah. You set that up really nice. You should be proud of yourself. This is on a serious segue, however, what I can't understand about it, and I know we'll get to the other stuff as we always do, and maybe you can tell me about it. He made the point that how Medicare is important to many, many residents of West Virginia, which doesn't surprise me. It's important to many residents of many states. And he seems to oppose expanding it into hearing and vision and I think dental work, which of course I would think is equally important to West Virginia and other residents. I can't understand. His opposition seems to be not on principle but financial. Is that how you're understanding it? Okay.
Yes.
He thinks it's a good idea to do that, but there's no way to pay for it.
And my argument to the senator would be, let's just take this part of the package because it's important. If you believe that Medicare expansion is of value to your constituents, then figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
I say this often in life, not just in politics. Our job is to figure out how to get to yes, not to just live with no. Okay? So, all right, you think it's cost too much. You think that this is too expensive to expand Medicare. You're worried about the future of Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, all that kind of stuff. I get it. Hey, I'm on
Good.
it.
I'm glad they are. I think everyone's happy they're worried about it, but fix it.
But the answer, the solution is not to ignore it. The solution is to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
And I'm with you because Senator Manchin seems to be, and I say this every time, I like Senator Manchin. I know I'm digging my own grave deeper with him because he and I used to be pretty close as reporters and politicians.
Yeah, government officials. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think he's been getting a little disenchanted with me lately. But he seems to be just solely focused on the dollars and cents. And again, with the whole Build Back Better bill, for example, all right, you don't like the $3.5 trillion, but can you figure out, if you think the $3.5 trillion includes things that are needed, then let's figure out how do we pay for that, which actually it's in the bill anyways, but just fixing seems to me to be foolish.
I really like, what, I love speaking to Biff every Tuesday. That being said, I did like what his substitute suggested that one time. Remember, she said instead of doing whatever the 10-year plan, make it a 5-year plan or something like that. Point being, as you said, there is a new path. Okay, let's figure out a way to make it work. Anyway, I know this is not my bailiwick, but I thought I would tell you he was speaking this morning because I'm just waiting to get the report from that. I mean, obviously I'm not attending that breakfast, and see what he says there.
Yeah, I don't know how much longer this whole thing can be dragged out either. I mean, there's going to come a point where it's a point of no return.
Yeah. Well, I think Senator Sanders is sort of lost his patience, if I can read his tea leaves correctly over the weekend. So, he's saying this has to be in, and Manchin's saying this has not to be in. So now you have two senators of the same party insisting on their way, which don't agree, which doesn't add up to 51 votes.
Yeah, and again, I'm just at some point I don't know what Biden's going to do. I don't know. At some point, do you give up? Do you take the vote and just let everybody live with that vote on their record? Do you? I mean, I think it seems to me that Biden has been pretty amenable to trying to trim things to accommodate Senator Manchin and Kristen Sinema a little bit too. But how far down that road is he willing to go before he says, you know what, we just take a vote, and if it doesn't pass, the folks who voted against it will have to live with it. I don't have an answer to that question, but I think that is a question that needs to be asked. Tom, this week, the Heritage Foundation came up with a report on, I'm not sure what call it, readiness, but on the Navy, basically. And it wasn't necessarily a good report, was it?
Not at all. Actually, it was a report on all the armed services, Howard, but the Navy was singled out in large part because the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative but well-respected think tank, Navy was highlighted in the report more because they have been pushing for a larger expansion of the Navy by numbers than what Congress is looking at. But this comes out every year. It's called the Index of Military Strength, and there's a 5-tier grades, much like A through F, but they don't call it that. And they said the Navy's in the middle at marginal, with the score edging to weak in its capability and readiness. The Navy and the Air Force were already, the Air Force and the Space Force were already rated weak. The Army was rated marginal, like the Navy. The Marines were strong, as was the nuclear capability. Those are the 6 areas that they focus on. And what gives them this weakness, Howard, is the ability to operate in regions of the world, Europe, Middle East, and Asia, as well as the presence of forces. And this is an important one that people overlook, is infrastructure. And a lot of that deals with our ports and the inability to have more ports, both here domestically as well as overseas. Whereas the Marines, they've been downsizing and shedding a lot of their armor and their heavy equipment to be more what they used to be, sort of a rapid deployment force in a sense. And that's gotten them positive points from this analysis. I want to point out, and this is critical, lest politics drift into this. This survey usually takes over a period of 2 years. In other words, it started near the end of the 3rd term of the Trump administration and continued through President Trump's last term and somewhat into this year. So it's not a reflection on the current budget proposals as much as what has happened. And that's even more interesting to me, Howard, since under President Trump we had really high defense budgets for at least 2 or 3 of those years, and there wasn't, a low one in its first year either. So, it's not a question of Congress cutting back on spending. It seems to be how they're spending the money, as well as elements that are out of control. Let me just give you one more example of that, not tied to this report, but one that listeners will remember. Now the Pentagon is concerned about how the United States can conduct counterterrorism operations in Afghanistan because we're no longer there. That's the kind of thing that lowers a score, the ability to conduct an operation. And I'm not talking about Afghanistan again because that's this year, but in other parts of the world, it goes to that infrastructure that I just mentioned.
The Heritage Foundation report doesn't have any actual force of law or force of policy, though, right? It's just an independent assessment of the relative strengths and weaknesses of our military and is then to be used as a guideline? Is that the way it works?
That's correct. That being said, advocates that support what it concludes, such as a larger Navy, will use it, in their arguments on Capitol Hill and elsewhere, as lobbying points, and that's fair enough. I mean, it is an analysis. Again, anybody who writes about this understands where the Heritage Foundation is coming from. That does not diminish the quality of their work because they explain exactly why they give a score to each service branch, why it's weak or strong, etc. So there's no hidden agenda here. You know what they stand for, and I find it very valuable. That's why I sent it along to you, and that's why I report on it because it's done. There's a lot of think tanks in Washington who actually do work that is well regarded and well thought out and well researched. It's valuable tools for us in the media as well and those who make policy. But it doesn't have the force of law. It's not as if it's an independent counsel's report or an inspector general's report in the Pentagon or in one of the many agencies that might have a little issue this and they'll be. This is a thoughtful piece, a thoughtful report, on what they see as the challenges facing the military. They're not known for giving high marks, Howard. So when you give the Marine Corps high marks and the nuclear arm high marks, that sort of stands out. Particularly the Marine Corps, which has had a couple, had a couple, by 3 or 4 years of struggling to find its identity, and really is still searching for it.
You know what I find interesting? I just think we, the general public, tend to look at the military as an entity, and we would think that if the military is ready, it's ready, or whatever phrase we want to use. It's interesting to see it broken down into the individual branches of the service. I mean, we know they're there, but to me, that's interesting that we've got the Navy in the middle ground. We've got Air Force is strong, and who was weak?
Air Force was weak.
Air Force was weak. Yeah, Air Force
the Marines were strong, and the nuclear capability area was strong. The Air Force was weak, and the Army and the Navy were middling.
Tom, I wanted to touch very quickly.
There's a segue, if I may, real quickly. I know there's a segue here. It doesn't involve Charlie Brown, and that's how each branch of the service is different, as you point out. We talked yesterday with John Kirby, the press spokesman at the Pentagon, about the vaccine policies and the religious exemptions. And what he said yesterday, and I have to get credit on it, he said that each service branch may come up with their own definition of what a religious exemption should be for a vaccination. And to me, that struck me as just what you just said. Meaning you could be you could be exempted for Branch A, but not in Branch B. And that struck me as odd that the services would not have sort of a uniform standard. Obviously, I'm going to follow up on that, but it just struck me as interesting. I'm sorry to get off topic, but it is not as unilateral, it's not as consistent monolith as a lot of people think, as you pointed out.
Yeah, that part in particular is interesting because I would think those kinds of policies, would be across the board policies for all American military.
Vaccines. That's why I want to get some clarity on it. Yeah.
That is interesting. All right, Tom, got some other stuff I wanted to get into, but time has run out, as it always does.
Sorry.
We have too much fun with other stuff, and that's okay. We will do it again next week, I guess, huh?
Okay, have a great week. Thanks, Howard. Bye-bye.
You too. Thanks a lot. Our national correspondent, Tom Squitieri, here every Tuesday. We pick up on a couple of the national stories, but then we usually have some fun with some pop culture conversation and other sorts of things. Let me see what I've got here. I got several new things coming in on the text line. What are they? Oh, this has to do with Charlie Brown. I guess you all are just telling me and Biff what it was that Charlie Brown got in his bag. I got 3 people tell us rocks. He got rocks. Yes, he did. He got Charlie Brown got rocks in his bag. I always felt sad for Charlie Brown. And in fact, we were talking about that, Teddy and I, when we watched it. I said, Teddy, isn't that sad? Why does he only get rocks, Granddad? I don't know, the poor man. Poor boy, he only gets rocks in his bag. You can text me if you'd like to, 304-214-1600, 304-214-1600, the Watchdog Radio Network text line. Feel free to use it. Also, the CityNet hotline at 304-232-8255, 304-232-TALK. Now, before I get to the break and then get to our guest, Melanie Joy, talking about our love-hate relationship with animals, the poll online at watchdognetwork.com this week has to do with vaccines and vaccine mandates. And the question is, at watchdognetwork.com, should businesses and hospitals impose vaccine mandates on their employees? Many places have done that. Some have rolled back a little bit now because of the legislation passed here in West Virginia. There could be some federal mandates coming on board in the very near future. So what do you think? Should business and hospitals impose vaccine mandates for employees? It's simply a yes or a no. And we're getting literally split 50 yes, 50 no %. So check that out on our watchdognetwork.com page. All right, let me see if I can pull this up here real quick. This is from one of our listeners. I want to be clear that I haven't yet gotten this from the cops, but sounds right. It's from one of our listeners. Construction worker hit by a car at Elm Grove exit around 7 a.m. today. About 5 cop cars on the scene, ambulance and a tow truck. If any of you know more about that, or if you are out in that area and you can text me safely, do that. But that's from one of our listeners. Construction worker hit by a car at the Elm Grove exit around 7 a.m. today. Cop cars, ambulance, tow truck are all on the scene. Here's some more news from WTRF TV with their headlines.
The WTRF Channel 7 News Update is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Now it's
"35% of the food in this country is wasted. Those aren't just numbers, they're our neighbors, your daughter's friend from school, the family of 4 next door." The Kroger Company's Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation is committed to making fresh food accessible to all by ensuring it never goes to waste. Together, we can help end hunger. Learn more at zerohungerzerowastefoundation.org.
A pair of Mountaineer football players honored by the Big 12 on Monday. Kicker Casey Legg named the Special Teams Player of the Week after he hit 3 more field goals and added on a couple of extra points in West Virginia's victory over TCU. Legg is now 13 of 14 on the season in the field goal department. And Charles Woods named a co-recipient of the Newcomer of the Week in the conference. He had a fantastic effort with an interception and a key fumble recovery. A couple of other honors going out from the Big 12. A pair of players who West Virginia will see on Saturday. Brock Purdy, the Iowa State quarterback, the Offensive Player of the Week, and defensive end Will McDonald has been named the conference's Defensive Player of the Week. Speaking of the Cyclones, they will come into this game absolutely stingy when it comes to defense. They're number 1 in the Big 12. They're allowing just 17 points per game. And on the other side, offensively, they're scoring 32 points per contest, which currently sits at number 6 in the Big 12. And one other football note, Texas Tech announcing yesterday that it has fired its head coach, Matt Wells. Current assistant coach, Sonny Cumbie, will fill in on an interim basis. Don't forget this coming Saturday, besides the Mountaineer football game, another Hall of Fame induction. The 2021 class will be honored. This year's members include Kerry Bland, Nico Campriani, Noel Devine, Dale Farley, Mike Fox, gymnast LaWanda Moody, and basketball player Olinka Sani. That is today's Mountaineer Report, brought to us by Kroger, the official grocer of WVU Athletics. I'm Tony Caridi on the Mountaineer Sports Network from Learfield.
Hi, Toppy Kirchville. Join me weekdays at 10 o'clock for Talk Line. We'll talk about the big stories affecting us in West Virginia, top political figures, sports personalities, sometimes just plain folks offering their opinions on what's happening today. 10 till noon, right after the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe.
$3.5 trillion. That's the cost of the reckless spending plan President Biden and the Washington extremists are rushing through Congress. Their socialist plan will bankrupt America and force West Virginia taxpayers to foot the bill for abortions, even painful late-term abortions. Thankfully, Senator Joe Manchin is standing strong, opposing this reckless spending spree and taxpayer-funded abortions. But Senator Manchin is under enormous pressure from Washington liberals to cave to their extreme agenda. Biden and Pelosi are intent on forcing West Virginians to pay.
Okie dokie, thank you.
Call Senator Joe Manchin at 202-224-3954. Thank Manchin for opposing Biden and the socialists in Congress. Tell him to stand strong against their plan to bankrupt America and force West Virginians to pay for abortions. Paid for by Susan B. Anthony List.
Most of us are faced with uncertainty every day. Your job, your finances, sporting events, schooling for your children, and so much more. With so much uncertainty surrounding you, there is one auto dealership that you can be certain about, and that's Doan Ford. You can be certain that you always get a great deal and the best service afterwards. Being in business for over 50 years has given Doan Ford the reputation of being a strong, reliable dealership. Be certain. Choose Doan Ford. Online at DoanFord.com.
I'm not buying till I check Doan Ford.
West Virginia Northern Community College will host its fall open house, both in person and virtually, on Saturday, November 6th, from 9 a.m. to noon. Both formats allow you to learn about programs, admissions, financial aid, and more. If you attend in person in New Martinsville, Wheeling, or Weirton, you can also tour the campus. Everyone participating in Northern's open house could win a $1,000 scholarship. For more information, visit wvncc.edu.
Dominating both AM and FM, the Watchdog is AM 1600 and 1370. FM 98.1 and 97.7. We are the Watchdog.
Live and local for the Ohio Valley, the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe continues.
$18 to the hour here on the Watchdog Morning Show. 47 degrees, Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. It's cloudy. 48 degrees, cloudy here at my home studios in the Elm Grove section of Wheeling, and 48 degrees, cloudy at the Robinson Auto Group Studios downtown Wheeling in the heart of the Ohio Valley. What you see is what you get. Look out the door, look out the window. It's going to be cloudy. It's going to be for stunk kind of day today. Temperature's not going to go much higher than where we are. It's going to go up to around 51 or so, but not a whole lot more than that. Update on a story I gave you right before the news break. It's a story of an accident on I-70 around the exit 5 in Elm Grove. A construction worker was hit by a vehicle this morning on I-70 near exit 5 in Elm Grove. Ohio County's EMA Director Lou Vargo says the construction worker is injured, but not sure how severely, taken to the hospital, being treated there. Wheeling Police and Fire responded to the call this morning. The scene around exit 5 has been cleared as of now. When we check in with Bob Westfall from the Big 7 coming up about an hour from now, he'll probably have some more info for us on that subject. I want to talk, this is an interesting subject I want to get into here with Melanie Joy. She's been with us in the past, but she's written a new book. And it's one of these things, you know, sometimes I got to stop and actually think about things and think about how does our mind work, at least how does my mind work. You know, I love lobsters. I love lobster, and yet I have a terrible time cooking them myself. done it, but I don't like it. I love lobsters. I love to go into Red Lobster and have a big lobster feast. But I look at those little lobsters in the front tank and they say, you want to pick out your own lobster? No, I don't want to pick out my own lobster because then I know that it's something that, I've eaten. And we seem to have sort of a strange relationship with animals here. Some will eat and some will pet, and never the twain shall meet. I think, which is what Melanie Joy is here to talk to us about this morning. Melanie, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So why don't I want to eat the lobsters that I can look at?
Well, that is actually a great example that you share. Most people we know, the vast majority of us actually are hardwired to feel empathy for other animals. Most of us care about animals and would never want to contribute to their suffering, and yet most of us eat animals. The most frequent and intimate contact we have with animals is through consuming their bodies during the day. And we, as you point out, we rarely, if ever, make the connection between the meat, eggs, or dairy on our plate and the living animal it once was. And, I, of course, grew up eating animals. I was like the meat lover's pizza girl. And I never thought about how strange it was that I could pet my dog with one hand while I ate a pork chop with the other, a pork chop that had once been an animal who was at least as intelligent and sensitive as my dog. We don't make this connection and feel our natural empathy for the animals we've learned to classify as edible simply because we've been conditioned not to think critically and to feel authentically when it comes to eating animals. We've inherited this mentality that causes us to disconnect from the truth of our experience. So, for example, if you were biting into a juicy hamburger and your dining companion turned to you and said, that hamburger is not actually from beef, it's made from golden retrievers, chances are, right, your experience of that meat has completely changed, even though nothing about the meat changed.
Yeah, oh no, I want that. It seems to me there's two levels here. One is the simple desire to not eat that which I have looked in the eye, so to speak, that we know is living. I can without any problem whatsoever love a lobster on my plate. It's still in the tail. I know it's from it's still sitting in the tail, but I love my lobster on a plate. But when I look it in the eye, I can't do that. I used to, every Thanksgiving, I used to read a story on the air. I don't do it. I haven't done it for a long time, but it was a story about some people who raised a turkey in their backyard and they called it Frank. Mm-hmm. And then one year they had to eat Frank, and how every year the family loved their Thanksgiving meal, but after they had to eat Frank, they didn't like Thanksgiving so much. So part of it, I think, is just a general disconnect between the fact that what we're eating is what's living. But I also think, Melanie, it seems as if certain animals we don't mind eating and others we wouldn't. And your example of dog is a great example. I mean, we pet dogs. We love dogs. They wag their tails and hang up their tongues.
You are absolutely right. And, and this changes from culture to culture around the world. But what remains, even though this type of species consumed changes from culture to culture, members of all cultures have exactly the same experience. Some animals, they have been conditioned to think of as edible, and therefore they don't feel discomfort at eating them. All of the other animals, they feel uncomfortable eating. Sometimes we do see the animals up close, and we can still override our natural discomfort at eating them. I think the really important point to get here is that the vast majority of people, if they were truly aware of what is happening, of how so-called edible animals or farmed animals become our food, they would be deeply offended and opposed and probably taking to the streets and protest. And yet, because of what I call carnism, the invisible belief system that conditions us to eat certain animals and to support violence without fully realizing what we're doing, most of us never think twice about whether we eat, whether we should or shouldn't eat animals and why we even eat any animals at all.
Yeah, not only do we sort of want to be blind to the fact that these are living creatures, but when we acknowledge they're living creatures and now they're food on our plate, we don't want to look at the process that gets them from living creatures to food on our plate.
You are completely right. It is very uncomfortable for us. And in fact, if you think about it, more farmed animals are slaughtered globally than the total in one day, than the total number of people killed in all wars throughout history. I mean, really think about that number. And this process is not a pretty process. For most people, even if the violence inherent in this process were reduced by 90%, it would still be 10% too much for them. And so really the point is, and why I wrote my book, Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows, was not simply to have another book about why we shouldn't eat meat, eggs, or dairy. I mean, we know that there are so many problems inherent in supporting animal agribusinesses. You know, animal agriculture is a leading cause of all sorts of problems, like climate change and human health problems and, of course, animal suffering. But I really wanted to write a book about why we do eat animals in the first place, so that people could step outside of this box that we have all been deeply conditioned into to make their choices freely. I mean, without awareness, there is no free choice. And what's very important to be aware of is that this system that I write about, carnism, it uses a set of psychological defense mechanisms to keep itself alive. Basically, it causes us to have distorted perceptions about animals we've learned to classify as edible, and therefore we're less connected to our natural empathy for them. Instead of feeling disgusted, we feel appetized, and we act in accordance with the system. So when people become aware of these defenses, they lose a lot of their power.
Look, the reality is America is a meat-eating culture. I mean, it is changing. I will certainly acknowledge that, but we're always going to be a meat-eating culture, are we not?
Well, always is a long time, and the same statement has been made about a lot of practices in the past that seemed inevitable because they were so deeply entrenched in tradition. But what history has shown us again and again is that when people become aware of reality, of situations, they demand change, and we're seeing change happening now. The proliferation of plant-based products is exponential. It's incredible. I live in Germany right now, but I come back to the U.S. and I'm always blown away. I walk into the supermarket and I just see aisles and aisles of plant-based alternatives to meat-based foods. And people are making this shift because of health concerns, because of environmental concerns, because of concerns for animals, a lot of reasons. And you don't have to be fully vegan to be a part of the solution. People can, number one, just raise their own awareness. At carnism.org, we have a lot of information for people who are interested, and they can be, they can help in the transformation of this violent system that's carnism in a lot of different ways. Simply trying to be as vegan as possible is a great step, but also, use your influence. Like, you're a perfect example. You're having a conversation about this issue that's reaching lots of people and helping them to reflect on their choices.
You mentioned going into the supermarket. Fast food restaurants are even beginning to add a lot more plant-based burgers and those kinds of things. And surprising to me, they're actually becoming pretty accepted and successful.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see what's happening. I've been traveling. I've been to over 50 countries at this point on 6 continents talking about this issue. There has not been a single exception where I have not seen that the movement, the vegan movement, and just, support for veganism, take the movement piece out of it, just support for plant-based eating is growing exponentially, whether it's Kuwait or Taiwan, South Africa, Lithuania. The same sort of quote-unquote trend is happening everywhere. So I want to just give a really quick example of one of these defense mechanisms for listeners who are wondering what I'm talking about. Carnism teaches us to think of farmed animals as abstractions, as lacking any individuality or personality of their own. So we learn to think, for example, that a pig is a pig and all pigs are the same, or to your example, a turkey is a turkey and all turkeys are the same. And this way of thinking disconnects us from our empathy, and it makes it much easier to support violence against these animals, to support, the slaughter of these animals. So your example of the turkey was perfect. That defense was interrupted when that turkey was seen as an individual with a life that mattered to him.
Well, I mean, yeah, name the animals and suddenly it becomes a different story.
It becomes a different story.
there's Frank, or there's Porky Pig, or there's whatever. Then you're right. They're not just. Actually, boy, this is a metaphor for a lot in society, isn't it? If we stop thinking about everybody as just part of a group and start thinking about people as individuals, I think it probably goes beyond this whole issue of carnism. So
you're so right.
I want to go back a long, long time ago, get in my time machine and take us back. And we're back to where Ugg the caveman is wandering around. And there's plenty of plants around they could eat, but Ugg decided at some point he was going to knock out the bear and eat him. And I guess he liked him. I mean, that's how the whole thing got started. Why? There had to have been something in Ugg's makeup that said the plants aren't satisfying me.
Well, I mean, that's a really good point. Just to your earlier point, I want to point out that the very same mentality that drives us to harm other humans drives us to harm other animals. So you're absolutely right that this mentality that we're talking about is applicable beyond just what we're talking about with carnism. And this, absolutely, Ugg at some point was unable to obtain enough vegetation due to competition among others for the food supply, or for plant-based foods, and therefore humans first became scavengers, actually, and then started hunting. And in the history of humanity, we've eaten a tiny, tiny portion of our omnivorous diet has come from animals. Now, a lot of people say, well, we've been eating animals for thousands of years, so therefore it's natural and it's the right thing to do. We have to be really careful not to translate natural into justifiable. I mean, we have also been murdering other humans for thousands of years, and we don't use the longevity of that practice as a justification for it today.
Yeah, that's a good point. But let me ask you this. Can we, is a fully plant-based diet, or a vegan diet, or whatever phrase we want to use, is it healthy? Don't we need some kind of meat in our diet from a health point of view?
I'm glad that you asked that. It's very important, I think, to acknowledge that because carnism is so widespread, it's what's called a dominant system, it shapes our public institutions. It shapes all of our institutions. So when people study nutrition, they're actually studying carnistic nutrition. And thankfully, there is a massive body of literature today demonstrating not only the benefits of a plant-based diet, but also the dangers of an animal-based diet. So the answer is yes, you can absolutely be healthy. And there's, Michael Greger's book, How Not to Die, is a great book. Nutritionfacts.org. It's a great website with lots of information. I always encourage people to, try to move along the spectrum of carnism, veganism, move in the direction of veganism. Just be as vegan as possible. And what many people find is that as they add more plant foods to their diet, it becomes easier and easier to reduce and ultimately eliminate, if they want to, their consumption of animal-based foods. And they find that they become tremendously healthier in the process.
Now, and before I let you go, tell me, how did you transition to away? You said earlier you used to love the meat lovers pizza and all that sort of stuff. So you weren't born disliking meat. What's your story?
Yeah, I actually ended up in 1989 when I was 23. I ate a contaminated hamburger. And I wound up in the hospital on intravenous antibiotics. And after that, I just stopped eating meat, not because I was thinking about animal issues or the climate. I stopped eating meat because I was completely disgusted by what had made me so sick. And in the process of learning about how to cook for myself, I became a vegetarian sort of by accident. I stumbled upon information about animal agriculture, and what I learned just shocked and horrified me. So that really was my transition story. And it was, of course, it was the 80s, right? And so I was 23 back then. My mother thought I was going to not live to see my 30th birthday. She was terrified that I had stopped eating animals. My mother is now in her 70s and has recently become vegan, largely because she wanted to improve her health. And her health has improved substantially. So things have changed a lot since the 80s.
Melanie, even if people don't read your book, and I encourage them to do it, but you get a lot just from the title. The title itself makes you stop and think why we love dogs, eat pigs, and wear cows. And that's a great question. I'm going to have to leave it on that question. Thanks for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it. Good luck with the book and with your work, and we'll talk again next time you're around.
Thanks so much for having me, and people can visit carnism.org if they want to get more information.
Sounds great. 9 o'clock, Watchdog Morning Show. It's time to check in with ABC News.
The Watchdog is FM 98.1, AM 1600 WKKX Wheeling, FM 97.7, AM 1370 WVLY Moundsville.
The ABC News is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Preston, for some...
All right, Biff. Josh Beach is coming up next. But I think we'll talk a little bit more about eating lobster before we get to him. And then we'll get to him. All right, I'm going to... All right, my coffee cup is empty. My Dr. Pepper is empty. I have to go reload. I'll be back in a couple minutes. I need them both. I'll be back in a minute.